I hope you're watching Boise State UNLV tonight because one of these teams is probably making the playoff.
You are Locked On College Football with Spencer McLaughlin, your daily podcast on all things college football. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Locked On College Football. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you so much for making this your first listen or your first view every day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day and your daily source to stay up to date with the biggest stories in this, the greatest sport on planet Earth, whatever those stories may be. Today's episode brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet, and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Is Texas A&M ready for LSU? Is LSU ready for Texas A&M? Talking about that game later and picking every game in the SEC this week. It's going to be fun. It always is. And another week of college football is upon us tonight with playoff ramifications incredibly real. You know what Boise State and UNLV have in common? They're big Notre Dame fans. Big Notre Dame fans. They love the Fighting Irish because Notre Dame plays Navy this week, who's undefeated. They'll play Army later this season, who's also undefeated. You know what? These two Mountain West teams, who are absolutely the two best Group of 5 teams that I have seen so far this year. I like Army and Navy a lot. I am very impressed with UNLV and what Barry Odom has done. More on that in a moment. You know what could be a real spoiler for them? If Army or Navy were to win the American and be undefeated, because then the Mountain West champion would suddenly, in order to get into the college football playoff, have to either be A, selected as an at-large, which is tougher for UNLV than Boise State, though not technically impossible, or B, they'd have to be higher ranked than the champion of either the ACC or the Big 12. Now, the Big 12 is the more likely of those two conferences to have a champion who is ranked lower than Boise State or UNLV would be. Probably Boise State, since they're already in the top 15. But is it impossible? No. No, it is not. Big ramifications on the line tonight, hence why I'm talking about it to lead today's show, because it's tonight. It's Friday night in Las Vegas. This is a huge, huge game. And both these teams have been really impressive. Now, Boise State has the more impressive resume. They've got a win over Washington State, who has a case to be a top 25 football team, pretty strong one, as a matter of fact. If you see Vanderbilt and or Navy lose this weekend, don't be surprised if Washington State creeps into the top 25, and Boise State's lone loss is on the road by 3 points to the team that is currently ranked number 1 in all of college football. So this is a huge game. This is a huge, huge game, and it should be another resume-boosting win for Boise State if they're victorious over UNLV, because number 1, they're on the road, and number 2, go look at UNLV's resume. They've beaten some real teams this year. They've been impressive. They've beaten Power 4 opponents. They should have beaten Syracuse, but this matchup is so highly fascinating for several reasons. The first of which is, in different ways, wildly different styles, these teams mirror one another. Their passing game is completely present, but secondary to the rushing attack. Both teams are really, really good defending the run. UNLV runs for about 250 yards a game. Boise State's closer to 290 because of that guy Ashton Jeanty, who'd be my vote to win the Heisman Trophy right now. And Boise State has been really good stopping the run, about 103 yards a game allowed on the ground this year, which is about what UNLV allows. So yes, at a simplistic look, you've got the classic conundrum of who wins the rushing battle, that team wins the football game. I hold that opinion for this particular matchup, but what I'm so curious about is how these teams do it. UNLV's offense with Brendan Marion as the offensive coordinator, that's a name you need to know in coaching circles, by the way. They've got the go-go. They put a lot of guys in the backfield. They get very creative. They're very clever. They run their quarterback pretty often. Haj Malik Williams, who's taken over for the former starter Matthew Sluka, yeah, he's been really, really good. He's their leading rusher, as a matter of fact. He's also, you guessed it, their leading passer, and he does both very well. Maddox Madsen, on the other hand, for Boise State, well, he's not running the football a whole heck of a lot, if at all, because they can just hand it to Ashton Jeanty. Why run your quarterback and risk him getting injured when Ashton Jeanty is going to break on average 3.8 tackles per play, or at least that's how it looks. That's not an actual stat, but if it were, would you have been surprised? If I had actually had that number. How many tackles per play does Ashton Jeanty break on average? Well, it's just under 4. Would you be surprised? Because I certainly wouldn't. So how these teams decide to run the football is very different. How these teams therefore go about stopping the run is also incredibly different. And I think both defensive coordinators should come into this game with a matchup or with a mindset of load the box, take away the run as best we can, force them to throw the football. Here's the kicker, though. If you watch Boise State, which I have many times this season, they will run the ball on 3rd and 7. They'll run it on 3rd and 9 because on average, if you run the ball with Ashton Jeanty, 3rd and 7, 3rd and 9, those can be rushing down. So if you're UNLV, you've got to take that away. I think Camper, the wide receiver for Boise State, is a really underrated guy, and people who watch this game are probably going to learn his name quickly as they go through. But I think that if you're UNLV, you're going to have Ashton Jeanty run for yards. What you can't do is have him put up a Georgia Southern-like performance where he goes for 267 and 6 touchdowns. What you can't do is allow for 3rd and 5 or more to be an opportunity for the Broncos to run the football. Dirk Cutter, the offensive coordinator, has been really good for Boise State this year, and they've got a traditional single back pro-style offense. Looks like the 49ers or the Rams or Utah, Oregon State. A lot of teams still, well, not a lot, but some teams still have a college offense that runs that way, while Brennan Marion is a new, trendy, flashy way to run an offense and to be really effective running the football. So beyond fascinated to see how that plays out in a game that has absolute college football playoff implications, and you all need to be aware of that. That's why I'm starting my show with it today, because I don't know how many of you are, but one of these teams has a really good chance to wind up in the playoff. The loser, boy, it gets tougher. It gets tough, especially if Army and Navy keep winning. Watch out. You better watch out, just like for Santa Claus. But as for this game, it's tough. It is really, really tough. I can see either team winning this football game. UNLV at home off a really impressive road win against Oregon State last week. One more thing before I make my prediction. The most underrated aspect of this game is the Boise State defensive line. They have generated 29 sacks in 6 games. That's just over 5 sacks per game. Is UNLV throwing the football as much as some of the other teams that Boise State has gone up against? Perhaps not. Hawaii throws the ball a lot with Braden Shager back there, and they pressured him routinely. But that Boise State defensive line, it is not to be trifled with. It is not to be trifled with. How does that unit respond, particularly in obvious passing situations? That's going to be one of the underrated keys of this game. I think UNLV gets this done at home. I think both of these teams are more than capable of getting to the Mountain West Championship game, even if they lose. But Boise State, back-to-back weeks on the road, that's a tough thing to do. Short week, I'd rather be at home. I like UNLV. Hajj Malik Williams has been dynamic. He's not been perfect throwing the football, but he's been pretty darn good. He's got a 70% completion rate on the year. He missed a couple against Oregon State last week. I think that UNLV is going to find a way to get this done. They're underdogs at home. This is going to be a fun football game. It's going to be a really, really fun football game. 34-30. I will take UNLV to beat Boise State and introduce chaos into the college football world. Let me know your thoughts in the YouTube comments or hit me up on X, formerly known as Twitter. Is Texas A&M ready for LSU? That might just depend on one guy. That's coming up next. First, this episode is brought to you by Z-Biotics. Z-Biotics pre-alcohol probiotic drink is the world's first genetically engineered probiotic. It was invented by PhD scientists, they're really smart, to tackle rough mornings after drinking. Here's how it works. When you drink, alcohol gets converted into a toxic byproduct in the gut. It's this byproduct, not dehydration, that's to blame for your rough next day. Pre-alcohol produces an enzyme to break this byproduct down. Just remember to make Z-Biotics your first drink of the night. Drink responsibly, and you'll feel your best tomorrow. As someone who's got experience with Z-Biotics pre-alcohol, I'm telling you, this stuff is phenomenal. You will feel great during, you will feel great after, you will be good to go. So go to zbiotics.com/lockedoncollege to learn more. Get 15% off your first order when you use Locked On College at checkout. Z-Biotics is backed with a 100% money-back guarantee. So if you're unsatisfied for any reason, they'll refund your money, no questions asked. Remember to head to zbiotics.com/lockedoncollege. Use the code LockedOnCollege at checkout for 15% off. PrizePicks is also bringing you this episode of Locked On College Football. PrizePicks is the best place to get real money sports action. With over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings, PrizePicks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on 2 players or more stat projections and win up to 100 times your cash. Run your game all season long on PrizePicks. PrizePicks is the best way to get action on sports in over 30 states, including California, Florida, Georgia, Texas, and many more. PrizePicks invented the flex play, which means you can still cash out if your lineup isn't perfect. You can double your money even if one of your picks doesn't hit. Download the app today. Use code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, you download the PrizePicks app, you use code LOCKEDONCollege, you get $50 instantly after your first $5 lineup play. Go check out PrizePicks today. Does Texas A&M have the stuff to get a big win at home? Andrew Stefaniak, Locked On Texas A&M Aggies, joining me here on the show. He's going to stick around for our full slate of SEC picks later as well. Stick around for that. But Andrew, answer that question first. Can Texas A&M go toe-to-toe with an LSU team that looks like a borderline lock to make the college football playoff with the way they've been playing?
You know, looking at this game, it took a while for people to buy into Texas A&M, and I'm not certain that people are still bought in. I saw a lot of folks, they're not going to beat Missouri. Missouri, it's not going to happen. And then they don't beat Missouri. They steamroll Missouri.
I'd just like to point out that the host of this particular program was not out on Texas A&M and thought that Missouri would be a win. I'm just saying. I'm just throwing it out there.
And so, looking at that, but then after that game ended, what I heard all week? Well, it's Missouri. They're overrated. I don't know when it's going to be, but people are going to learn about this Texas A&M football team. And this LSU football team is talented. They're really good. This is your opportunity to say, we're not a joke. We're here to play. And I don't want to spoil anything, but my prediction for this game is going to back that statement. I think Texas A&M is going to make we're not a joke. We're a team that can make the playoff and maybe can go on a run in the playoff. They're going to prove that on Saturday.
I've heard the commentary around this game get to the quarterbacks, and it's an interesting quarterback battle because you have one guy on the LSU sideline in Garrett Nussmeier, who I've been a fan of since they lost to USC week 1. I remember coming on after that show and saying, this guy is that dude. Like, kind of a question mark coming into this year. He sat for a long time. Is he good? He's talented, experienced, but like he doesn't have a lot of game experience. And I watched him play USC and thought, yeah, he's that guy. He's been that guy. And most people are more confident Garrett Nussmeier than they are Connor Weigman, who has certainly played good football in the last couple of weeks. Should they be?
Here's the deal. I mean, it has been a roller coaster ride for Mr. Weigman. And those either remember, I'll own it. I was all aboard the Connor Weigman hype train all off season. I've looked really silly and I've looked really smart, depending on the week. Against Notre Dame, he was bad. Against Missouri, he couldn't miss. Against Mississippi State, he was a few dropped picks away from that stat line being a lot uglier than it was. So here's the deal. I can't confidently give you an answer either way on this. And that sounds like a cop-out, but I'm genuinely, it's going to be which Connor Weigman shows up today. Is it going to be the guy that, this guy looks like a top 10 Heisman candidate? Or is it going to be the guy that you go, why is Marcel Reed not quarterback in the Aggies right now? It's going to go one way or the other. And frankly, it's just which version shows up. I mean, once again, which version shows up will decide this football game. And until Connor Weigman proves, and that's what I wanted to see against Mississippi State, stack solid performances. You play great against Missouri. You play great against the bye week. Then you look against Mississippi State. You know what I mean? It was not a great game for him. He had some good throws. He had some ugly throws. He got saved from a few potential pick sixes in that game. But the reality here is it's which version of him shows up.
He reminds me of like a number 4 or 5 starting pitcher in a Major League Baseball rotation. You're going to look up at the end of the year. He's going to have an ERA somewhere between 4.5 and 5 for an average Major League Baseball team. But you see throughout the year a lot of fluctuations a lot of times with those guys where they go out and they go 6 innings, give up 1 run. You're like, whoa, That was a great out. And then they can't get out of the fourth inning because they're throwing balls all over the place and walking in runs. And it's that Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde component that I also am curious to see in this game, because when Weigman's been good, man, he's been so good. But the fluctuations, and I haven't seen that really with Garrett Nussmeier on the other side. He hasn't been perfect in every single game and every single moment, but in the biggest moments, I've got zero questions. I've got zero reservations about whether Garrett Nussmeier is going to come through. The question will be who's on the field and who's going to have the opportunity to make a play. Because you tell me, hey, LSU's on the field late, they have a chance to go win the football game with their offense on the field. Yeah, I'm going to take Garrett Nussmeier in that spot every time. I like this Texas A&M defense. I like Garrett Nussmeier more. I think they've really found the rhythm. Their win at Arkansas last week, I was really impressed. But if you tell me that Texas A&M's got a chance to go win the game with their offense on the field and Weigman's back there, I'm going, I don't know. Even if he's been good all game, is that one bad throw? Is it lurking around the corner?
You know, Connor Weigman is a quarterback. And it's funny, Spencer, I think you and I even kind of had this conversation before the season. It's like, we think we know Connor Weigman, but then you go, yeah, he's been around. This is his third year, but he played a couple games as a freshman and then a couple games last year, gets hurt. I still feel like we don't know who Connor Weigman is. He's still, I believe, right around 10 career games with the lack of playing time as a true freshman and then the injury last year and the injury so far this year. He's right around 10 games in his career. It's not like he's a seasoned vet when it comes to, he's played 3 full seasons. You don't really know, but I mean, the thing about Nussmeier, it was funny. Like you said, watching that USC game, I remember after watching that ball game, I went, they lost, but it was like, it felt like they won. I mean, just because he played so good, and we're not going to get into the coaching. There's a lot of stuff going on there, but
they haven't lost since then.
Exactly. And so I'm in on Nussmeier, but the thing about Connor Weigman is I believe it's that Missouri game. It's a weird kind of throwaway game to me because it was a big game, but then 3 minutes into the game, it just fell over. I mean, if you watch that game start to finish, it felt like that game was over just off the rip. I mean, just watching it. I mean, I'll maybe say first quarter. We'll say first quarter, but I mean, it just was ugly quick. So he hasn't really had that in the Notre Dame game where it was kind of back and, close for a while. He didn't, have that huge fourth quarter to go win a game. He needs to prove that. He needs to prove, because this game is going to be tight. This is not going to be, I don't think it's going to be like that Missouri game for either side. Texas A&M is not going to steamroll LSU or vice versa. It's not going to happen. This is going to be a close football game, in my opinion. And so I think it's going to be a game-winning drive from one side or the other. And like you said, I lean my confidence in the side of Nussmeier in that situation. But this is, once again, the word that's going to be the theme of this segment for me here, Spencer, is going to be opportunity. This is another opportunity for Connor Weigman in a big-time game to prove who we thought he could be, and he really needs to do it sooner than later.
Give me one other key besides Weigman playing well that you say Texas A&M's got to do this or they're not winning the football game. What is that for you?
Well, I mean, if you've watched Texas A&M all year long, as important as Connor Weigman is, he's your quarterback. In all honesty, my biggest concern for this offense is, can they run the rock? Colin Klein wants to run the football. You look at the numbers. Connor Weigman's going to throw the ball. If I had to take a guess right now, I'd say they throw it 25 times. If you start playing into LSU's game and it becomes more of a shootout, obviously that number increases. If you play Texas A&M's style of play, it's going to be 20 to 25. Le'Veon Moss and Amari Daniels need to get going running the rock. When it comes to yards per carry, they scored well against Mississippi State on the ground, but the yards per carry was not there. This offensive line did not have its best game when it came to run blocking for these running backs. You need to see the running game be good because, once again, that's how Texas A&M wants to beat you. They don't really want Connor Weigman to be the one. I mean, they'd love for him to go 23 of 25 for 315 yards and 2 touchdowns. That'd be great. But at the end of the day, the rushing attack is how Colin Klein wants to attack a defense. And if it's not good in this game and they say, well, we can't get anything going, here we go, Connor. Fire it up. Start throwing it deep. Let's see what happens. I don't know if Texas A&M can win that way. So I'm going to say the run game has to be great.
Score prediction time. This is the first of many, some would say all, SEC games we're going to pick here. That's coming up in the third segment. But this one first, Andrew, I know the home field's going to be on fire. I just like the way LSU is playing. the trust factor that we talked about. I don't just feel that about Weigman. I feel that about the LSU team. Comparatively to Texas A&M, they went on the road, beat a good Arkansas team in Fayetteville handily last week. This one's a dogfight, though. I think this is just going to be a sit back, relax, grab a beer, throw your feet up, enjoy a great football game. That is if you don't have a fan rooting interest in this particular game, of course, which I'm kind of grateful I don't, because I think it's going to be stressful for 3 hours, but give me LSU 31-28.
LSU's defense has stepped it up these last few weeks, and I don't know if I'm bought in. They're playing good football, but I believe that defense is still a little bit vulnerable. I think the Aggies are going to be able to score. Ironically, and I'm not just saying this because you said it, I was literally getting ready to say Texas A&M 31-28, which is so funny. But that is exactly how I see it going.
You would be shocked at how often that happens here on this show. We don't plan these things out ahead of time, folks. It's just great minds happen to think alike from time to time. We'll see how often we agree with every other game in the SEC. Is Bama rolling? Are they going to find? I don't even know. That's coming up next. First, this episode's brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. It's America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets, guaranteed, when you place your first $5 bet. Do you want to bet the college football games that Andrew and I are about to pick, or the one that we just talked about, LSU and Texas A&M? It's going to be a close one. It is going to be a close one. I like LSU. Andrew like Texas A&M. Who are we going to like in the rest of the games? Do you think we're sharp? Do you think Texas can cover 18.5 at Vanderbilt? Go bet it at FanDuel.com. Do you believe Ole Miss is going to trounce Oklahoma by more than 3 touchdowns? Go bet it at FanDuel.com. They're America's #1 sportsbook, so go check them out at FanDuel.com. Alabama's playoff hopes on the line this week and every week. Do they finally get right? I refuse to pick that, Andrew, because I've just seen too much from this Alabama team to think, I think they're winning the football game. I think Missouri's covering, though, because I don't think Missouri's a great team, but I haven't seen Alabama play great football in, over a month at this point since the Wisconsin game? Like, that's the last time they looked like, the Georgia game, perhaps, in which in the second half they completely imploded. So first half of Georgia is the last time we've seen Alabama truly play to their full potential. I don't know why I'd feel confident that happens this week. Maybe it's because they're at home. I'll take Bama to win. Missouri covers 27-20.
Knowing that the outlook on Brady Cook's ability to go in this game is not looking great. Have you been seeing that? I
have, but my reservations about Alabama, I actually think their defense has taken steps forward. My reservations are about the offense. That Jalen Milroe is throwing interceptions all over the field. Red zone, non-red zone, over the middle, down the sideline, one-on-one, whatever. He just still looks like he's forcing the issue too hard.
I'm with you on that, but I think at home they're going to be able to score enough points to where this line to me, so this line's -17 in favor of Bama. If Brady Cook is not injured, what would your guess for that line be in this football game? Just ballpark guess.
If he's not injured?
Yeah, fully healthy.
Before the season, it was around 8. After the season gets underway, it was probably around 10 to 12.
Okay. I'll be honest with you. We're going to go from just disagreeing slightly on our first game to disagreeing by a wider margin here.
Okay.
I think now 17 is a darn big spread, Spencer. It's a big spread for a 15 versus 21 matchup. I'm not going to sit here and say I'm not going to say they cover, but I'm going to say they're right there to where it's I think they win this game by 14 points, a 34-20 type of football game. I saw enough of that backup quarterback when he was in for Cook last week that I just don't know if I'm buying it. I don't think we're going to leave this game going, heck yeah, Bama's great again, but I think that they're going to win this game. I just think without Cook, and that's the vibe I'm getting, I don't think he'll be out there. I think Bama handles business in this one.
Alabama has not beaten a team by double digits since Wisconsin. That was back in week 3. But we'll see if that changes. Continuing along with the SEC picks, how about Texas? Andrew, what is your upset gauge with them going to number 25, Vanderbilt?
Say it again.
Vanderbilt is done catching strays on this podcast. They might still catch them on others, but they're done, at least for this season. I mean, holy smokes. I had Jordan Rodgers on at SEC Media Days before the year, and I've had to apologize to him here on the show because I was dogging Vandy all year. And Vandy is not just a fun story, Andrew. They're a pretty darn good football team. Yeah. I don't think Texas covers here either. This line, according to our friends at FanDuel, has been hovering in the 18.5 range. Mm-hmm. I think Texas wins. They're the better, more talented team. I think they bounce back on the road, but I don't think it's as easy as Longhorn fans would like it to be. So give me Texas 27-17.
I think that the Cinderella story of Vandy football has been a fun one. And if you disagree, go kick rocks because, man, it's been fun. That's my opinion here. Here's my take on this one. I don't think that this game is ever going to feel close. But then you look at the final score and you went, oh, yeah, I put Vandy plus 18.5 in my parlay. Oh, they lost by 17. Cool. I think it's going to be that type of game. It's never going to feel like Vandy's in it. I think Texas wins it. I'm trying to think of a score for you where it's 17. But I think that Vandy covers barely in this game. Never feels like they're in the game. But I'll tell you this. I don't know if I'm buying the upset meter here, but Diego Pavia is never going into a football game thinking he's going to lose.
Nope.
I'll leave you with that.
No, he most certainly is not. And I mean, I think at this point we should dub him king of Alabama football with what he's done to those two SEC programs in the last 2 years. I mean, that guy's a giant killer, and Texas is a giant at the moment, and Steve Sarkisian's looking for a bounce back. I think they'll be able to figure it out. Turns out Georgia, very good at football, which surprised a lot of people. Not me. I thought Georgia would win the football game. But moving on here in the SEC, let's go to the bottom of the league. Teams that are searching for a win, any sort of good feeling. Our poor friend and boss, Zach Blackerby of Locked On Auburn, has just got to be going through it because Auburn is yet to win an SEC football game. Somehow, they just keep inventing new ways to lose. They're on the road against Kentucky here, Andrew, after blowing it against Missouri last week. They had every opportunity to win, and they found a way to lose. I feel the same way about Auburn in the negative that I feel about Alabama covering big spreads or Indiana winning football games. I refuse to stake my pick on something that I haven't seen and have no reason to feel confident that it could. So give me Kentucky to win this game. This is going to be an ugly one. Watch this, Andrew. 14-10, Kentucky wins.
Well, you've moved into my hometown now in this conversation. I am a Kentucky native. And I cover Kentucky as well. And what I can tell you with confidence is no one here cares. You know what happened last night? Mark Pope had his first basketball game, which means Kentucky football's done. No Kentucky fans listening here. Once again, I am a native of Lexington. Don't yell at me, but we all know it's true. I think Auburn is an awful good football team. Mm-hmm. And what I mean by that is they're awful, but they're good. In a way that if they can just, you look at the way they played this year, if they just put it together for 2 seconds against anybody, they could have won, Arkansas, Oklahoma, and then what was the one? Missouri. They in all honesty, probably should have won those 3 football games, you could argue.
Yep.
And they didn't. I just feel like, maybe it's a do factor, but I think they're a better football team than they've let on. And Peyton Thorne, believe it or not, in all honesty, hasn't been the issue of late. He's been playing a little bit better is what I'm saying. He's not turning it over like they did earlier in the year against your
aim low and achieve with that statement, but you are correct.
Yeah. And not saying, I'm not getting the Peyton Thorne for Heisman jokes out, but I think Auburn comes into Lexington against a fan base that's starting to check out. Because once again, we're getting close to that month of November, which you know what that means here in Lexington. I think Auburn wins a game that I recommend everyone here don't turn on 17-10.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think this is going to be the most entertaining game of the weekend. We'll close with Arkansas, Mississippi State. And before we get to that, Oklahoma travels to Ole Miss as, oh boy, a close to 3-touchdown underdog. I saw in the Sooner fans, cover your ears here. I saw what I did find to be a rather humorous tweet that said, the funny part about Oklahoma going to the SEC being Nebraska to the Big Ten is that everyone saw it coming. And I thought, yeah, kind of did. And this is not a good first season in the SEC for Brent Venables and company, playing against an urgent Ole Miss team that, like Alabama's, got to win every week or they're not going to make the college football playoff. I don't know if Ole Miss covers 20. I'll throw Oklahoma fans a bone. 31 to 13. Ole Miss.
Here's the deal. Mr. Revenge of the Sith himself, Jackson Dart. Did you see what I'm talking about, Spencer?
No, but please expand. I need it.
Okay, you got to go find it because you'll love this. After they lost to LSU, he had on a black hoodie, and he already just a hair looks like Anakin Skywalker. Just a hair, right? He had on a black hoodie, and he was kind of bent down like this to where it was just barely above his eyes. And, he just kind of gives the, we control our own destiny. We can't lose another game or our playoff hopes are over. Revenge of the Sith. I think that Ole Miss wins this game. Do they cover 20? I don't think Ole Miss fans care. I think they care about a win. I think they win this game in that 14 to 21 point range. Are you seeing it now?
Yeah.
There you go.
So hopefully he's not doing anything as nefarious as what Anakin Skywalker did with that hoodie over his face like that, because that was ugly. Yeah. But great movie. One of the best Star Wars films out there. But we'll close with Mississippi State against Arkansas. Hogs are favored by under a touchdown here, Andrew. And the reason is that if you've been an SEC sicko paying attention over the last few weeks, you know that Mississippi State is winless in the conference. They've only got one win on the year. They were blasted by Toledo. They, like Auburn, don't look quite as bad as the record indicates. I wonder if Arkansas doesn't have the disappointment factor from losing so handily against LSU last week. I'm going to do it, Andrew. I'm taking the upset. I think this is the one SEC win of the year for Mississippi State. Jeff Lebby's got that offense running at a pretty solid clip right now. I don't know how, but he's figured it out. I'm taking the Bulldogs 28-24.
I have a feeling. Here's my prediction, and I'm going to agree with you on the win there. I was going to take Mississippi State, but what I will tell you is this. What I will tell you about this game is this. I have a feeling if there was an award at the end of every season, it was given out for the worst best game of the year, I have a feeling this is going to be a candidate for the worst best game of the year. Because going into it, it's supposed to be, well, who cares? It's Arkansas and Mississippi State. I think this is going to be a darn good football game. I think Mississippi State and Coach Lebby, get off of it. I think that they get their first SEC win of the Lebby era. I agree with you. They're better. The Toledo thing's inexcusable, but they've hung around some football games. They look solid. I think Van Buren is dealing. I think Mississippi State is gonna get the win, and I think they might have something in Van Buren, a player that we're talking about a good bit heading into next season.
When you hire a head coach and it's because it was not going well under the previous administration, in that head coach's first year, you keep expectations low, but you do look for like one moment or one game where you go, hey, if this guy can win that game, imagine once he gets some players in here. Yeah. Imagine once he gets a little bit more incorporated. Kenny Dillingham at Arizona State, great example. They went 3-9 last year. They almost beat Washington on the road, and they did beat UCLA. They had no business playing with either of those teams. Those were better teams, better coaches, a lot of people saw at the time, who were more entrenched. Like, I think this is going to be that moment. So how about that? The double upset of Mississippi State over Arkansas is how we're ending today's show. We'll see if we have to apologize to the Hogs later on. Andrew Stefaniak, Locked On, Texas A&M Aggies. Appreciate the time, my man. Appreciate everyone listening. I'll see you next time. And until then, hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.